Yeah, today's our day to work on stuff. You've caught us on our work on stuff day, which is apparently what we're talking about too, so it's convenient.
How long are you usually in for?
Like 4 hours or five,
Three, 4 hours,
three, 4
somewhere,
hours
yeah, somewhere in there.
on Fridays.
This is the day when we kind of like just usually like meet up and kind of like show each other what we've done for the week. But this is a slower week because we're kind of finishing our folder of demos and that we're gonna send out to people and stuff. So we've kind of just been doing last minute mixes, that are probably too obsessive, but that's what we've been doing.
Just kind of getting lost in it.
Yeah, just kind of like it's the thing that's like we're sending all these demos to people to be like, do you hear anything in here and do you want to produce this record? And so it's like you kind of want to leave them a little bit undone. Well, we just naturally leave them undone because we're not very adept engineers, but you want to present them in the best fashion so they're like, oh, I hear something here, this is gonna be a great song. But also it's like we can't really go that far with it. We're getting better and better. It's definitely the best sounding demos folder we have.
Did you self-produce the last EP?
The last EP it's funny because we kind of did.
Yeah.
It's like the last couple of records we bring someone in kind of like in the middle. It's like if you think of recording as like you record the tracks, then you work on them for a while, then you mix them. We bring someone in on the then you work on them for a while part. So it's kind of co-produced, I guess, but it really felt like we produced it, I feel like.
That one, the EP was especially mostly us.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't... I think the only one really Graham did was Walk It Off.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one was mostly produced by us.
As you've like gotten better at producers, over the years, how has that then gone on to like impact and influence the songwriting? Does it have an impact on it or affect it in any way?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like when you start listening to more dance music, like club music, so much of the songwriting is in the production of the song. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the parts, the production dictates in a way how the song goes. So the better you are at kind of achieving things production-wise, it opens things up for you as a songwriter, I think. And I think that even now, you're able to get closer to the sounds that you want, and then the songwriting takes on a different meaning when you can kind of produce sounds in a way that's closer to what you hear in your head, or that you're able to experiment with sounds to take them far out of what you thought in your head and then able to make a new song out of it or something like that,
Is the process more satisfying then if you can kind of get closer to what it is you've got floating about in your head?
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely, like, it kind of turns into like a... like I feel like in songwriting you're always kind of like trying to pull off something that you like in other music, or like that you're like, so certainly with like, since we like so much club music, like when you get your stuff banging, I mean, that's like what's excited me about music. So when we can do that, then yeah, it kind of does turn into a weird like motor for the songs.
Do you find now as well that a lot of the demo, I know you were speaking there about how you're working the demos up, the parts of the demos stick around in the final song?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, more than probably other people want. I think we're frequently kind of being like, no, we just like the demo one better. Frequently. I'm sure a lot of people you talk to say the same thing. People you hear that, because that's the original thing that gets you excited about what the song is. So I feel like anytime you try to redo it, it's like pretty quickly whether you're going to be able to get it or whether you're just going to spend 3 days trying to figure out exactly what you could just slot in from the original demo. You know what I mean? So
I mean, it's kind of like one of the things that I hope that having made so many records has like made us be able to like work around that, because definitely some on our earlier records we would be too tied to the like, well, I don't like it as much as the demo, but this, we did this in an expensive recording studio, so this is what we need to do, and so we would not use things that were as good. But then once we realized that we could actually use the demo parts, then we had to kind of like work a way around dealing with demoitis and being like, do I just like this because it's the demo and I have demoitis? So I think now we've done that, both sides of that, so many times that we're pretty good at being like, no, this demo is good, and no, we can get something more out of this. You kind of know once you start throwing stuff at it, like when you're re-recording stuff, whether things start opening up and it sounds more exciting, or whether it sounds not as good. And ultimately what you want is to start throwing stuff at it, things start opening up to exciting moments, and you're like, great, this is cool. And when that's just not happening, it's just like, just stick with the demo.
But it is funny. It's like I think we probably all remember the first time that we were in a fancy studio and used like some $20,000 synthesizer through a $50,000 compressor, and they're like, "Sounds better, right?" And you were like, "No, I like my Casio through my 4-track." And the first time you kind of had the guts to be like, "I think I just like the other one that's not the expensive one." You know what I mean?
When you're younger as well, it's harder to say no to things. Like that's something that you kind of get better at as you grow a bit older.
Yeah.
And people in studios are just assholes about that shit too. They're like, "Really? You know? Do you know what this microphone is?" You know, and you have to be like, "I don't. I'm sorry."
Do you tend to stray away from the bigger studios now then? Do you like to kind of keep it in a more intimate environment?
I mean, everyone does. It's the whole industry has gone away from that. It's sad that those studios don't exist anymore. But it's also exciting that anyone can just kind of do this stuff now. So I mean, from our position, it hasn't been like, you know, we're certainly a band where it would work better for us to be in an expensive studio, you know, whereas some laptop artists and stuff, it doesn't matter as much. But so we do, I don't know, I guess we didn't do it this last record at all. There was no expensive studios.
We're not against it on principle.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like we're in this situation where I feel like we're improving as producers and engineers, and we're just good enough, but we're not good enough. You know, so it's like the expensive studio still has a place in our world. It's just has to be the right person there, and it has to be the right, more than the right gear, it just has to be the right person and the right situation, you know?
And ultimately a big studio can just be like a focus. You know, it's like, okay, we're here, we're in the studio, like, and to just use that as like, I mean, we're very much like, we like to use anything that comes in our way, you know, like, oh, we got this keyboard, let's just use it, you know? And so if an expensive studio comes in our way, we're going to run the cheap-ass beat through the expensive compressor. You know, we're going to do all that stuff, you know? That's what we've come across, so let's do it, you know?
How has working in the home studio more impacted your workflow? Because, I mean, when you look at the last, 5 years or so, you guys are the most prolific you've ever been. Is the home studio partly a result of that, or what's kind of feeling that?
I feel like, honestly, partly it's a result of these Friday meetings. I feel like
Yeah.
we're always kind of like getting together and working on stuff. And so if you know the other person's doing stuff, you're like, well, I better fucking do something.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a way we end up overwriting a lot, which I think has been interesting. And I think also because we, especially in the writing stage, we like to be like, really just try anything. And then we end up with all the stuff that, and I feel like it's particular to you and me, I feel like that we always end up kind of falling in love with the weirdest stuff where we're like, but what about that super weird one we had? You know?
Yeah.
And people are like, well, what about that other one you had that sounds like a single? And we're like, yeah, that one will be fine. But what about that super weird one? With like the lyrics that we tried to write in French and like a sample of a mouse or something. And people will be like, okay, yeah. But we really want to finish it, you know? So then we end up finishing a ton of stuff and hopefully having I think this EP was fun because it felt fun to feel like we had an outlet for the weirder stuff, and I feel like it felt good to feel like the weirder stuff could make it in the world and people could check it out. And maybe there's like 2 people that like this one thing that we really liked, but it's nice that it finally got to those 2 people, you know?
Was part of that because of the EP format? Did you feel a little bit freer because it wasn't an album and you could maybe, it takes the pressure off a little bit?
Well, I would say to your other question, in some ways it was because of we did get better at the home studio, because this is like, you know, we have a process where we're always kind of like, we vote off these songs and those songs just kind of usually just die a death. And this was the first time where these weird songs that Rafael's talking about that we actually really like they sounded good. Like the songs that got voted off, the weird ones, were like, this is the first time we had like leftovers that sounded good. So it was kind of like, and that kind of like, since they were all kind of the weird, unique ones, they hung together in this kind of cool way, you know? So in some ways it kind of worked in that respect.
I mean, you mentioned that, you know, the writing process, you guys are writing a lot more than you used to. Do you have a better understanding of the writing process as a result of that, or how much of the process is still, you know, a mystery to you and it still has that mysterious quality that's quite appealing and intoxicating?
That's a good question.
I mean, it's always mysterious. No one ever fucking figures it out, you know. But you certainly figure out better tricks, you know. And like, I think if anything, you figure out better tricks to the things that stumped you before, you know. but it remains mysterious. You know, it's like it feels like every time that you do it, you're kind of like, oh, I did it again. You know, like it always just feels like it always feels like, well, where would another song ever come from? And like you'll finish it that night and you're like, I'll never write a song again. Like, you know, like just feels like, how did it even happen? So it feels like a magic trick happened every single time, you know. But you definitely get better at, like, there's just stuff that almost the same thing in a similar way to what I just said about the EP. It's just like, whereas before we would have gotten stumped at like, oh, I love this little verse thing, and now we've gotten more like, well, we have just this song with just a verse, and now we can make this other kind of song with it or something, or, you know, we know how to meet those challenges more. So it remains mysterious, but you know how to beat the challenges more, I guess.
So what were some of those challenges that you used to face that now you feel, you know, more, it's easier to overcome them, you feel better at tackling them?
I mean, I feel for us the challenge has always been to, from a production standpoint, it's been to kind of like get the songs to work like we'd like them to when we hear a song in a club that we like or something, but maintain it as a song that works as a song or something like that. I feel like that's what we were always running into in the past, was like, how can the production feel as energetic and as creative as like a Hessel Audio song or something, but that we can have a song over it that has a verse and a chorus or something. And I feel like now maybe the production, we can, on our own, we can get it a little bit closer to banging in that way that we like. And so we don't have to have that in the back of our head, like, well, someone's gonna have to come in and make the drum sound right or something like that. Like we can maybe get it closer so we can focus more on either the songwriting part or on just stretching out, you know what I'm saying, like doing different things and knowing that we can pull some of that stuff off, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like it kind of helps to focus a little bit as well. Like if you clear all that stuff at the back of your head, you're not worrying about it, and you can just fixate on the thing that you really want to, you know, build up or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, so many of the songs I think we've done that we liked have been songs where we were imitating something and we fell short, you know, like to imitating it properly. Some of the songs that haven't worked have been songs where we weren't able to actually get it to sound like we wanted it to sound. You know what I'm saying? So there's like a fine line between the two things. Like I don't think we don't want to make Berlin techno tracks, or maybe we do sometimes and have them come out in some way, but that's not like the main purpose of the band. But we do want them to inspire the same kind of excitement that those songs inspire in us or something like that. So you're constantly reaching for this stuff, either from the production or from, you know, the choruses or from the songwriting, you know?
I wanted to ask as well about one of the really early tracks, Me and Giuliani Down by the Schoolyard. Because last time we had a conversation, Nick, I remember you saying about how your words kind of come back to haunt you, and sometimes you'll write about things and then years on they'll kind of reemerge. Sure. He's someone who's been back in the news lately for a lot of the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Is that kind of an example of that?
He has certainly come back to haunt us, that's for fuck sure.
But he was never in there for the right reason. I mean, he always sucked, you know?
He always sucked, but I will say at the time, like, that we wrote that song, it felt a little bit like, you know, he was America's mayor, you know, and he was like, everyone still loved him. But, you know, for us in our little scene, everyone like fucking hated him. But, you know, like, you know, at that time we wouldn't write as many songs. So I spent a lot of time like kind of like working on it, you know, and I like would remember I was going to Barnes and Noble and like reading his autobiography to kind of like get behind who he was and whatever and all that kind of stuff, which was probably useless, but it's good to have some kind of focus like that, you know. And I guess I didn't want to not know what I was talking about, you know. So, yeah, I guess I mean, certainly that has come back to haunt us too. Also, just because like anytime he does anything, like someone will tweet at us like, you know, like, oh, let's get Giuliani to #1, and it's kind of like, I mean, at this point, it's like our whole brand could be hating Giuliani. You know, it's just like I've kind of resisted it because he's just an ugly, despicable thing to have to see in your feed as it is, you know. So, but I'm always this close and this tempted, but I'm kind of like, unless something really strikes me, I think I'm gonna leave it to like, you know, we'll post a song when he dies or goes to jail, like, you know, it's like I kind of want to, you know, we said what we said, you know, and we stand by it.
It's kind of funny though in a way because, you know, I feel like so many of those 80s punk songs are like they're kind of set in a time because they're screaming about like Reagan or Thatcher or something like that, and like those people are gone. And the same thing could have been said for Giuliani, but he has this like grotesque second act now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you could have pegged that song to a very particular time, but now it like in a way it makes the song timeless because he's
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
fucking awful human being.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's almost like if Thatcher, Thatcher was still alive and did some more heinous shit, and then all those crass songs about her or something became like we're
Right.
suddenly relevant again. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
What was he? What exactly was he doing to New York in the early 2000s? Like, why was it your scene was kind of like you were saying that everyone liked him apart from your little scene? What was going on?
Well, he kind of resurrected these old codes. They were basically racist codes to like crack down on bars in Harlem or whatever, and like that was the way they could shut down these bars when they wanted to. Is just be like, oh, there's dancing here, you can shut it. And so basically, what they wanted to do was, what was the grand plan? It's kind of been so long since I had to talk about it, but they're basically, I forget why he wanted to do this, but he cracked down on all the bars and clubs in New York, so you couldn't dance. So, for instance, this one of the one bar that Gorman, Chk 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 member, worked at the time, like they had like a button that would turn on the lights in the DJ booth if the cops were coming in, so that they could just be like, yeah, nobody's dancing here. So it was pretty extreme at one point. To us, it was just like, having moved here at that time, you moved to New York to do it, to go disco dancing, to go clubbing, like to live the dream, and like to move here, and they're like, no, it's like Footloose, it's like Indiana, it's like you can't dance here. You're like, why would it's just like, it was ridiculous in the 80s in the Footloose movie in Indiana. Like, why would that be happening now in the 2000s in New York City? So
What did he have against dancing?
I
Who
think
doesn't like
have
dancing?
you seen the shoes? I mean, it's one of the memes that
The
keeps his
shoes,
shoes.
yeah.
That guy hasn't danced. Have you seen his shoes?
No.
Just Google Giuliani's shoes, and you're like, that's why that guy doesn't dance.
Did you see the image of him the other day when he had the hair dye like melting?
yes,
He looks like a monster, man.
Yeah, no, it's pretty rough.
it's
pretty
awful.
rough.
It's awful.
Did you use that to fuel you then, like in the early 2000s? Could you take that kind of oppression and use it to be like, fuck this, we're going to rally against it and,
Well,
make
that
great music
that one
anyway?
felt very. The thing that I always say about political songs is just that, like, it needs to feel like you have something unique to say. Even when John Lennon was like, "Give peace a chance," he was like, it's like, why don't people just give people peace a chance? And then he wrote the song. It's like he felt like he had a concept. To more than just like, war sucks or something. He felt like he had a concept to go with. He felt like he had something unique to say. And certainly with Giuliani, it just felt like, well, we have something to say, and we have done some political songs, but they since everyone's talking about politics constantly all the time now, and and you like some other tweet with like thousands of likes, I felt like a lot of people have been a little more succinct at saying what's wrong with this moment, than I felt like I could necessarily put into song. But we did touch on it a few times. It's come up here and there, like,
Come up.
and I felt like, it was Slow Motion, like, was definitely like about how we felt about the 2016 election, and that what we were kind of able to like, I felt like we were able to say like, this is how we feel about this moment. This is how we feel about it, and that's why we felt like it was kind of like a unique thing to say about it. It wasn't like, and the Trump is a bad guy and whatever. It's like it sometimes it hasn't. I haven't noticed any songs like that from anyone really saying. They're not like the Reagan punk songs. It's like no one's like, Trump's a bad guy because this and this and this. Like, because it hasn't felt relevant. To a song. And especially in some ways, it may be also that we've been so inundated with politics at this moment that music has gone back to more of being a release. Whereas like, in Dylan's days they didn't have Twitter and all that, and Dylan was essentially the tweet that they were all liking. It was like, this feels like how I feel. That the answer is blowing in the wind.
Do you think with the Trump stuff, though, it's almost too obvious, like what you're saying there, that it doesn't feel right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to the later stuff, you were saying that you kind of touch on political things. When it comes to the deeper themes of it, you kind of sneak it in. Like, it's the kind of things that you don't notice until a few listens. Like, on the last EP, I noted down a couple of the phrases, actually. There's nothing wrong with dying alone. People do it every day. It's kind of just snuck in there as a little phrase, and maybe you can't make it on your own. And then there's stuff on Walk It Off, like, Can't tell me nothing just like my mother. Don't stop me talking just like my father. It's these little lines you kind of sneak them in as opposed to structuring a whole song around.
Well, I mean, the mother and father one was pretty much specifically tip of the hat to the original sneaker, which was Prince. Because that always kind of like blew my mind that someone could certainly throw this out there, but he's such a big Joni Mitchell fan, and like that's they always make such a big deal of that, and it's like, but in a number one song like When Doves Cry, for him to say like maybe I'm just like my mother, maybe I'm just like my father, like that was a heavy theme of a number one pop hit, and certainly I think partly things that he was getting from Joni. Joni was she's the first confessionals songwriter, or that's of course like saying what the first rapper is, but certainly she was one of the first to kind of put it out there in that way. And I think that the way that he did that in a pop song was certainly we're always trying to get that with our own. It's like you're always kind of like, I definitely think we're like always making the records for that person that notices, because we noticed that in records. It's like definitely like I'd be like on an acid trip into track 9 of a CD and just be like, fuck man, I can't believe they did this shit. And it's like, that's certainly like, we definitely want that there for our own songs. And it's like just trying to get everything in there that you can. And certainly I will say also, it's like for the songs that we play live, like the ones that have lyrics that I really like remain fun to sing. So it's like, it's kind of like it helps me to have just the lyrics be better. Like it's like like a song by the Must Be the Moon, like it cracks me up every time. I'm like, man, I really gave it to him on this one. But I like the like even that one I felt like it's like it's just like it's like a simple hook up and whatever, it's fun, it's all party, and like let's all everybody get fucked, get laid or whatever. But it's like also saying a lot to me, it's like says things about the way that guys and girls relate, and like the difficulties of making those relationships work. So I mean, I think I kind of always use this as an example, like to me, like the Woody Allen movies when he tried to be like Bergman and only have it be like serious, like wasn't able to say as much as he was in those ones where he like the movies are funny. Like he would say as many serious things in his funny movies and they were fun, so to us it's like it's that same thing. It's like we're trying to it can be emotional and political and funny and all in one thing, and so you're just trying to give it as much depth as you can.
There's something ironic about that though as well, because he kind of wants to be Bergman. It's like, you almost feel like he doesn't want to be funny.
But it's kind of like, it's like us when we're doing our experimental thing or something. It's like, well, we want to be like this, but maybe when it works best is like when it's all of the above, rather than some strict, well, this is some experimental thing,
Do you get a sense of the importance of like a song's lyric when you write it? Like what you're saying there about the ones that you like the lyrics, they remain fun to sing. I mean, same with any aspect of a song. Can you get a sense of that in the moment, that this is going to be something that's going to hang around and still going to be, fun to perform years down the line?
I think you get a sense. I think we both know when we've written a lyric that's there to fill in a melody, and when we've written a lyric that's there to be considered like a lyric.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think we've talked about it too. Like I think sometimes you're just trying to fill up the melodic structure of a song, and you're kind of using these words. I mean, I think we could tell you each of the words that set off alarm bells of like, oh, you're just kind of like filling this in a little bit. And then there's other songs, and I think a lot of the songs on the EP actually where you're like, yeah, this is a lyric. This is like a lyric that I would read, that like I would think someone might put in a yearbook quote in their yearbook or something like that. So I think you get the sense when you're writing. I think we've tried harder to have less of the fill-in lyrics and more of the lyrics, and really try to put ourselves through the revision process to not do that. You know what I'm saying? Because I think pretty soon when you've gotten a turn of phrase that works, and when it's just kind of like, I mean, I'm not gonna throw us under the bus because with each of those kinds of songs of ours pop in my head, but
But
I think
and you also have to know when you just have something that just sounds good and you need to leave it. It's like there's things where in the past where I got caught up on like making everything be something really, some amazing statement, but I've lost, like when I was just saying, chicken sandwich originally, it's just sounded better, and you don't know what, because most of the time people don't care, and that's what you got to go for first, But I think we were good at like balancing it at this point. Certainly.
Why do you think you've started getting a little bit more precious with the lyrics and what you're saying there, making that conscious effort to make
Well,
every
we've
lyric
always
matter
been
even
more
more?
precious
Yeah,
about
we've
them
always-
than we get credit for
Yeah,
being.
yeah,
I think I think sometimes people think that all of our songs are like get on the floor, you know,
Yeah.
dance,
Yeah, yeah.
and we very rarely have songs like that, and the lyrics are worked on pretty hard. So I think whenever someone notices the lyrics, it's kind of like you noticed, thanks, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Nick, I forget who you told once that it was a joke that the two artists that get mentioned the most when we're talking are Prince and Bill Callahan. You know, because I feel like that's the kind of lyrics like we think we're trying to be like Bill Callahan songs, you know, that are humorous and sad and deep and political if they need to be and about relationships. Like that's what we're aspiring to. You know, we're not just trying to write like party starting kind of anthems.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if we are sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're always fairly precious about them, you know.
Was Bill Callahan, was he someone you kind of, I think, did you reference him in terms of an influence for your new record as well? The upcoming solo one?
Yeah. I mean, I think that lyrically he's been an influence of ours for a long time, but musically it's less so. But then that's one of the reasons I think you do a side project is to indulge these things that you know, it's like that you can't always indulge with the group or something like that, you know. But I think with Bill Callahan, we definitely reference him a lot, and we definitely like point out his turns of phrases a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like just little turns of, because I mean he has no fill-in lyrics. I think
Yeah.
all his lyrics are very considered. You know, I even feel like he maybe starts with the lyrics and kind of builds around them that much, which we do less. You know.
You can go too far as well sometimes. So like you need sometimes those moments of levity. Like you're saying, he fills everything in, but that can create a tension that can become a little bit much.
Yeah, he can be a little much, definitely.
With the new record as well, you're singing in Spanish
Yeah,
for the first time.
yeah.
Had that been an idea that had kind of been swimming around your brain for a while and something you wanted to do, or did it come quite organically or naturally in the moment?
It came organically, I think. I mean, we've done a couple of Spanish songs with Chk 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 actually, and they're continuing to kind of experiment with that. But I think I think for me it was a way, I think, to avoid the self-conscious. Because I think writing lyrics can be very self-conscious, you know, like because you feel like in a way writing in Spanish, I feel like, well, no one can understand this anyway, so I can like pretty much write about anything, no matter how simple or how inane. Like you know, there's a song on there about how much I like to drink coffee. Like I don't think I would ever write a Chk 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 song about that because I'd feel a little bit like self-conscious being like, you know, coffee, you know, like that. But in Spanish, I'm like, well, no one's gonna fucking understand this anyway. So it's like, and I do love coffee, so it's like whatever, you know. It allowed me to kind of explore things that I didn't normally explore in terms of topics. But I think it's actually come back and it's made me less self-conscious in English. And I've tried to be less self-conscious because I think that that's not a good place to be. I think there's a fine line between being self-conscious and not allowing yourself to be open or vulnerable to things that maybe would feel a little bit embarrassing or something like that. So I've tried to use that to be like, you know, if I do want to write a song about something that seems inane, how can I do it in a way that works, you know what I'm saying? Rather than saying like, well, I can't write about that. I have to write about, you know, whatever, you know?
Sounds quite liberating.
Yeah, it's been liberating too. And the funny thing is that the Spanish record is mostly being listened to in Latin America, so people can understand the lyrics. So it's like, I always wonder sometimes, they're like, man, what's this guy on about? You know, because they can actually understand it. And then my friends that don't speak Spanish are always like, yeah, it just sounds so romantic. Or they say something like that. I'm always like, yeah, not really. You know, it's like the least romantic record I've ever written. You know? So it's kind of funny, you know, how it ends up turning out.
Is that something to do you think that romanticism, is that like down to the musicality of the language, or where do you think that's kind of coming from?
I think maybe in the exoticism of it, you know, it's like, I think that coffee song I played and at a thing, and the person was like, it was so moving. Like I was almost brought to tears or something. And I was like, you must not understand. Because it's literally like I'm walking down the street with a thing of coffee. I'm psyched. Like that's all the song's about. So it's funny to hear someone be like, it was just so moving to hear you. So I think it is just like the exoticism of hearing, you know, like I often think of that with like Brazilian music or African music. I'm like, they could be saying anything, and I just think it sounds great. You know, it's like it's certainly liberating. But like I said, I think I've tried to bring it back to. I've tried to make it so like I'll own anything I do, even I'll be like, no, fuck you. I wrote about this thing. I wanted to write about it. Here's the song. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, when I listened to it as well, I can't speak Spanish, but one of the things I kind of got from it was this intense nostalgia. But I don't know, is that kind of slightly off the mark, or was it something you felt in the process?
No, I mean, I guess maybe it was nostalgic in the sense that like I moved away from Mexico when I was 10, so it's like maybe there's some wistfulness to it in some way. I could see that, but maybe it's just the acoustic guitar, the image of a guy on a stool like singing or something like that that contributes to that. I don't know.
Have you been back to Mexico since you left?
Yeah, actually, we go play there sometimes. We do shows there sometimes, and like a couple times I've been to like where I used to live and stuff like that, just to take a picture of it and this kind of stuff. And the first time I went, actually, one of the songs on the Spanish record is about like walking around the first time I went back with Chk 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 and seeing a guy that kind of looked like me and was my age and had a baby the same age, and I was like, maybe that's the guy I would have been if I never would have left. And he was just like pushing a stroller, and I was like. Maybe this is what I would have been doing if I would have never moved away, But instead, I'm going to play a show and getting out of here. You know what I mean? So it's been, I guess that's a little nostalgic when you put it that way. But
it's always weird when you go down that rabbit hole, like in your mind when you think about a certain decision you made and what would have happened had you not made it, and kind of imagine the old life.
Either really small or really huge, like I'm sure if you had never left Sacramento, like what kind of records
actually
I
was thinking about when we went to dinner and like we were about to part and like you were like, well, should I do it? Should I join the band? Like because he was like, we'd asked him to join the band and he had turned us down and then kind of like changed his mind at the last minute after we'd found another bass player.
I got fired from a job, and then I went to dinner with Nick that night. And I was like, yeah, I got fired from this job. And he was like, good, now you can join the band. And I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, all right. And then he came over, he's like, okay, play Must Be the Moon. And I just had an acoustic guitar, and I was like, I think it goes like this. He's like, okay, you're in. And then you had to call and tell the other guy he couldn't be in the band anymore. So, yeah, that's a pretty big one, I guess, for both of us.
Yeah, that could have gone easy. We might not be having this conversation now.
Are there any other moments in the history of the band that kind of stand out to you in the same way, that you think that was a decision that we made right and it could have easily gone another way?
I don't know if that was like a real turning point for the band. I mean, at the beginning it was like such a big group of gang of people that you could have kind of taken this or that person out. It was kind of like, and it was just a force like moving forward kind of, but definitely like, at that moment, like a lot of those people had left, and it was unclear where we had just made like a record that maybe wasn't so satisfying, and like it was unclear if the band was going to have the power to make it through the next decade or whatever. So I don't know that I can necessarily point to other big. Certainly in the first before Rafael, I don't know if you can think of other big moments.
Well, I think about when you and Paul went to see Jim that morning.
Oh yeah.
They went to see our friend, our friend Jim. You were there. So.
Yeah, well, we had, people always complain about South by Southwest, and because it's such a schmoozy industry thing, and you kind of just got to take it for what it is and have a good time. But basically, having a good time meant getting super fucking wasted on the Sunday after it, and actually meeting a girl who we wrote Slide with for the Thriller record that night. And then the next morning being really hungover but getting really high on coffee with Paul and walking around Austin with nothing to do. And it's just like, oh, fuck it, let's just call that guy Jim. It's like, and see if he'll meet with us. And he like came and picked us up. He's like, yeah, let's meet right now. And like, so then we met with him, and that was like that was the
Jim
first,
Eno from Spoon, and he
Jim
produced
Eno from Spoon,
Thriller.
and he produced Thriller, and that was like just like a definite like. That's where we kind of began the second phase of the band, and that's where we like learned a lot about making records that we kind of continued to this day, So even we learned a lot from him, and I hope that he learned a lot from us in that whole process. It was like, but that was like the last time we had like not the last time, but that was like the last time we had a producer who was like a coach who was like, this is what you're gonna do, and that sort of thing. So that was a big part of what is taught us how to make records.
What was the most important lesson you learned from working with Jim then on that Thriller record?
I don't know.
These are the questions that are hard to answer, because it's hard to like you're like, oh man, I love that book, and like it really changed me. You're like, well, how did it change you? And you're like, I don't know, it just did. It's kind of like if it affects you on a deep level, it's kind of hard to put out, and it's like. And it would be little things. But that said, there should be some concrete examples.
I mean, I feel like something I learned from Jim was that you kind of like, you try to make every sound interesting and work. You don't leave any stone unturned. Like it would always be like, I felt like I'd be like, okay, I think we have this. And you'd be like, let me just try to jiggle this and see if I can figure something out for that one little thing that's just sitting there. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that. You know what I'm saying? So it was this kind of like, he just had this kind of like relentlessness to just keep trying and keep trying, keep trying. You know what I mean? I feel like that was good for me to know, to kind of see like, you don't have to settle, you don't have to stop, like you got to keep going till you've left everything kind of unturned. And I don't think we've worked with anyone since that's as kind of like diligent to just be like, I'm going to just keep trying with this until it's cool. You know what I mean?
And he's definitely like the last like studio kind of producer that we worked with, where he has a studio with a bunch of cool compressors and synths, and like it's about using that studio as the instrument.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to what you were saying earlier, that a lot of it is about the person who's in the studio more than the studio itself.
Yeah.
What happened that day in Austin then? Did you kind of connect with him straight away? Do you remember your kind of first impression of him and that encounter?
I always think it's funny when he tells the story, actually. Because I was like, I don't know, man. I mean, I was hungover and coffeeed up, but I just went in there, saw the studio, was like, I didn't know what a compressor was. I always say, actually, I learned what a compressor was from Jim. Like, I made like, I don't know, like 5-6 albums before I knew what a compressor was. Like, definitely like I learned that from Jim. But so he showed us the studio, and then I kind of just played him some dance tracks and was like, we want to make a record like that sounds like this. Like, do you want to do that? And he says it was just like kind of like he thought that was a crazy thing to do, because he was just like, I mean, he makes all kinds of records, so of course he's just like, yeah, I mean, I can do this, like, but to us it was like, we kind of like had this like, we had that kind of like dance music kind of like this revered kind of like thing that we could never actually achieve. We wanted to make a record like this, and so to me it was like very normal thing to do. But essentially, like, he struck me as like, I don't want to say it was like love at first sight or something, but it was definitely like a connection, and like, yeah, this guy's really cool, I like him, and he seems fun and friendly, so we kind of took it from there. Like, we hemmed and hawed about it for a while, and then we kind of just like, well, let's go out and spend a weekend and just make a song with him. So Rafael and I went out to kind of just test it with him, and that was where I finally got an impression, really, like, okay, this is what it could be. Because we had something that was a demo that maybe the rest of the band wasn't that excited by, and then we were kind of like able to turn it around and turn it into something and be like, look, this is what we could do. And we that was really fun. That was definitely, yes. I would love to go back and do that with him again. That was really fun.
Although you said you kind of pitched it as a dance record, that is quite an eclectic album as well. Like you are kind of going through, in the same way that you have with the last few records, going through quite a lot of different genres and styles.
Yeah, I think that comes from this kind of like overwriting and just kind of like trying everything, and this kind of making sure we indulge, like, in a way, kind of like what we were saying about Jim, like making sure if we have some weird idea that we indulge it. It's like something like Maybe You Can't Make It on Your Own. I think I had played Nick the song. It was slow, it was kind of ballady, and he went and turned it into this footwork thing because he heard something in it. It maybe immediately it didn't strike us as working, but then it was like, no, we're going to see this through until it's something that we like. And so it was, so I think that's what ends up making us write kind of eclectic records, because we're down to indulge whatever kind of fancy we have, within our songwriting, and we're down to kind of like see it through and not just look at it as an exercise, like, oh, and remember that weird thing we tried to make into a footwork track? Oh yeah, that was weird. But we actually were like, no, we're gonna see this all the way through, mix it, finish it, and then hopefully someone out there would be like, and what's up with that 160 BPM crazy song? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's why we've ended up doing some eclectic things, because we've whether it's that or some other songs I could think of. I feel like we've pushed ourselves to kind of see things through.
It's interesting because if you think about that original slow ballady idea, that then almost comes back up on Certified Heavy Cats when you have Take It Easy. It's kind of similar in that vein. Do you sometimes have that where you have like an idea a few years earlier and maybe it doesn't work out, but then you kind of see it resurface in a different form down the line?
Well, I think Nick did most Take It Easy, but I think that something that we talk about a lot and that we've been trying to get better at too is kind of to listen to try to follow what the song is telling you it wants to be. So it's like for a song like Take It Easy, rather than like be like, well, if we just bump the BPMs up to 130 and put a big house kick drum on it, we could kind of bring it into the fold as like a big anthem or something. Be like, this is crying out to be this kind of mellow thing, to the point where you wrote the lyrics about taking it easy or something. Sort of like resisting, trying to do what's best for the song and what makes the song work as its own little 3-minute universe the best. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that to me has been what we've been trying to get better at in a way, is being like, well, this is this, and we're going to try to make it work as this thing, rather than, and so then you do end up with some more ballady tracks, or, you know, maybe on this new record there's a couple really fast songs and a couple, you know, that you end up kind of all over the place, you know what I'm saying, rather than trying to bring things into some fold of like, well, it has to be a Chk 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 song, so it needs a disco guitar, or it needs a whatever, you know.
Does it feel different when you're in the studio working on that stuff, when it comes to like the faster ones and the slower, more ballady ones? Are you channeling that energy in a different way when you're approaching it?
Well, I guess I'd ask you that. The slow ones, I feel like you're particularly kind of like you want to make sure the slow ones still retain your interest in a way. They don't feel like a lull, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I really hated at concerts when they're like, we're going to take it down here a little bit, you know? And then you're like, oh, okay, that's like when you go get a drink. And like, so to me, a ballad has to, you know, like, you know, Purple Rain, no one's going to get a drink during Purple Rain. Like you're going to fucking take that 8.5 minutes in or whatever.
You're going to get your lighter out.
You're going to get your lighter out, which you don't want. Yeah, you want them to get their lighters out, not go get a drink, you know? So a ballad has to matter as much as a dance one. And so certainly since we're not people aren't checking us for ballads. So if we have one, it better fucking count, you know? It can't just be like a throwaway. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's really all the same thing. You're just excited about it. You know, it's all the same thing, whether it's a fucking slam and techno or whether it's an acoustic ballad. Like, you're like, this, you know, each time you're just trying to get it to fucking fly, you know? And I think with us, it's like, you know, there's ones that it's like easy to just get it up. But yeah, this one flies. And there's other ones, it's kind of like, to us, it's like the trickier ones that we're trying to kind of like make fly, you know, because that's more exciting for us. And so certainly when you got a ballad, it's like, oh, can we make this fly though? That'd be so crazy if we made this one fly, you know?
I think as well about that song though, you get kind of caught out by the soundscape because you're not expecting a ballad, and then that's what kind of piques your interest, and then you almost tune into the lyrics more.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of grabs you, and it's an interesting song lyrically. We spoke a little bit about it last time when it came to breaking the fourth wall, but it's very kind of self-aware and very kind of objective, almost kind of looking back on yourself. Does that come from being like a self-analytical person, or where's that kind of edge to the songwriting coming from?
I don't know. That one's, you know, that one's very just me, like vibing, you know. If I'm being fully honest, I would say that was a kind of like vague groove I barely kind of had, and I put it on when I was super high. And I don't write a lot when I'm high because I don't like to have that kind of pressure of it. Like when I'm messing around with music and I'm high, because I only smoke weed once a week, I'm kind of like pretty like, now I'm going to listen to all these things, and I treat it kind of seriously or whatever. But I also kind of like, if I'm messing around with music, I don't like to have the pressure of I have to write something. I like to just be like, I'm just fucking with stuff. I'm just having a good time. I was telling him, actually, I was just messing with some Ariana Grande stems when I was high last time, because it was kind of like, that was just a fun thing to, you know, it's like something I would do. And actually, I mean, I started making this fucking stony version of Into You, you know? It was just like, it was just fun to like hear like that. And it doesn't fucking matter, but it's a fun way to listen to music and play with music, whatever. So certainly with that one, I was kind of just messing around, and that groove started happening. It just felt like, take it easy, you know? And then when the lyrics happen, to me, the lyrics are like there's actually, we both read that book, Revolution in the Head, you know, where they analyze each.
Oh, the Beatles book.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting, the one song where he's talking about two of us, and he's like, is the song about John and Paul, or is it about Paul and Linda? And it's like, you fucking numbskull, it's fucking both. You know, and Paul doesn't know which parts are, or maybe Paul does know that this line is about John and Paul and this line is about Paul and Linda, and it doesn't fucking matter. It just means the song. It just means two of us, and you're able to listen to it and think of the two of us, whoever that you think to in your life, and maybe you think of 12 two of us as in 12 different pairs. You know, it doesn't fucking matter. It's the song. And with Take It Easy, it was like, you know, there's the line about like, you know, dealing with you know, I think I might have told you, it's like our manager was calling me right at that moment and telling me to, like, you know, whatever. And it's just like, you know, I don't want to be involved in self-promotion. I just want to take it easy. I just want to write songs. That's how I'm going to make good music for the people who are going to want to see an Instagram post about us. But at the same time, it also felt like a kind of, to me, it was about the comment of like, about how everyone's just too quick to kind of be enemies and fight at each other. It's just like, kind of everyone kind of needs to relax. Like we don't all need to be constantly mad at each other at all times. So it felt like it was about that in some ways too. And then it was just about in the very beginning of it is definitely about like starts circling around in my head, and it's something I can't do instead. It's like it's a message to myself. It's like with my own anxieties and the things, the pressures the worries that I have. So it's like it's all of those things in one, and it's like it comes together as this great message in the chorus to take it easy.
Yeah, and then people can impart their own thing onto it as well, and it kind of just keeps expanding.
Because everyone's going to have their own kind of like what they need to take it easy about. Ultimately, the sound suggests the whole meaning. It's like I couldn't have said like I want to write a song about all these things. I would have divided those up into different things. But the sound of that groove and the way it felt easy. It felt like something I wanted to take it easy to. So like all those things came out of the feel of that. It's like the emotion of the track is what suggests the lyrics usually.
It's interesting what you were saying as well about getting high once a week to kind of listen to music in a different way. Are you quite conscious of trying to achieve new perspectives and kind of get just
Absolutely.
in general on music, really? Yeah,
absolutely. Even without getting high, you're always kind of like I was actually reading that book this year, like Bass, Mids, Tops.
I'm not
it's
familiar.
a UK book. It's about UK sound system culture and whatever. And it's like, I really liked reading this book about all this kind of music that I didn't care about so much. It's a series of interviews with different people from all these genres, and they're all talking about this exciting moment in their life when they're so excited about these genres. They didn't know we're a genre yet, and they were kind of like, I was just mixing this, and then people called it dubstep or people called it jungle or whatever. It's like, so it's like, for me to be, it was a really free zone to be in, and be listening to all these people talk about themselves being in this free zone. And so I really liked that put me in a zone of like, of unsureness, like, to have to listen to like, wow, they seem really excited about it, and listen and be like, yeah. But then that started to open me up a lot more. And I was kind of like taking more chances because it was like about all these people taking chances. And as much as I know when I sit down at the computer every day, I have to take chances. Like, you still need to push like every time, like take a chance. But what's the chance? Am I taking the chance? So yeah, I'm definitely. I feel like we're definitely conscious of like we have to be in like a new zone, and we have to be at that's where the exciting. If you look at the Beatles' career, it's like at every moment they were at a completely exciting moment of new things that they were trying to digest and spit out. So it's like, and the same with Prince. So. And that's who we put ourselves up with. We're like, it's like Beatles and Prince. But that is what we like are constantly referencing. Like, those are the guys, and whether we're as good as them or not, it doesn't matter. They're our heroes, and they're who we're trying to be like.
Yeah, and I think if you're a band that's been around for 20-something years, you have to be especially careful to make sure you're still open to what's happening, to be what the conversation around pop music is, or around music in general is. Because that's when we're in danger now of kind of like, ossifying into like a wax piece disco band. And if we don't, I feel like we definitely try to listen to things in a new zone. I know for me, I always try, especially if I don't like something, it makes me want to, that I know is pretty popular. Like I remember when all my friends were talking shit on Lil Yachty or something, I was like, I got to listen to this Lil Yachty record till I like it.
Yeah,
to like understand why it's good.
Lobo.
So I feel like we I think that's something that we share too, is like this idea that we have to stay open to sounds, and we can't get to that point where we're dadding around being like, well, it's the boom bap hip hop that really works. But none of this like autotune SoundCloud. It's like, no, you have to ingest all that stuff and put yourself in those positions, or else you won't ever. You won't move ahead, because we don't have the advantage of being, when you're younger, I feel like you're just out exposed to things all the time. And now as you get a little bit older, you have to push yourself to be exposed to it, or else you'll be listening to the same 6 David Bowie, Prince, Beatles records over and over again,
How else do you think your age kind of informs your music? Has it kind of changed what you're writing about as you've grown older as well? How else does it kind of bleed into it? 'Cause it's interesting to look back at that. You've got 9 records now, 8 records,
8.5.
and each
we
one's
like
at a
to
very
say.
kind of specific point, and each one's like a very specific point in your life.
There was that funny comment you made one time where you're like, I think it's when you were single, and you're like, so all your songs are going to be about like you having a nice day with your wife and kid, and all my songs are going to be about being single. And we didn't hit that, you know? Because after that, I think, I won't say who it is, but there was a band that made a record about how happy they were in their domestic world. And I remember thinking like, all right, yeah, I can't. That's bullshit. We can't be doing that shit either. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would say your age informs it, you know, other than you know.
I mean, it's a very basic difference between being young and being old. Like, you're young, you're willing to try more stuff. You don't care. You think nothing matters, and there's no levity of anything. And when you're old, you understand that there is like a seriousness to all that, and so you have to trick yourself into feeling young. You know, the advantage you have as being older is just that you have wisdom. You have more of a sense of the big picture, and you can understand stuff. You know, so you have to take your age. You know, when I was young, I would be closed-minded about I was more open to a lot of things, but I was also closed-minded in other things. You know, I was, that's not punk, or that's not whatever. They're not real, or whatever. You know, or that's stupid. And so now, as an older person, I will say things are stupid for a different reason. You know, and because I'm old and I don't get it. So what I have to use, but since I do have, I'm older and wiser, I can understand that all these genres of music and these things do matter. And so I am trying to get into new music through my wisdom, instead of my being young and wasted at a party like, what is this? This is insane. You know, like, I don't have that advantage now. So now I have a different advantage, and I try to work from that advantage.
It seems like something you're quite conscious of as well. Like, you seem to have quite a grasp on it in a way that you can kind of work it to your advantage and work it to make the music interesting and keep pushing it in exciting directions.
I mean, you have to be aware. You have to be real with yourself about, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, in the same way I tell you, like, that I got into Lil Yachty, I was also conscious about not like getting dyed dreadlocks and getting a face tattoo. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to find that balance of like being your age, but also being open to things you're younger. And I think you do have to be kind of very painfully aware of it, because if not, then you're just one of those people that's out there being like acting like they're 23 when they're not, and that's fucking embarrassing, you know? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think we have to be aware of it, because I mean, sounds like dramatic, but I think like the very like livelihood of the band depends on us being very aware of that and fighting it and being open and not succumbing to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same thing. We come back to the new solo record as well. Again, it's something you've never done before.
Yeah.
Pushing yourself in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, and I know, you know, like Nic made a solo record, which I hope people will hear soon, because I think it's great. And I think that both of the records, it's funny because they're totally different, but I think they both, if you know us, are very obviously our records, you know. So I think it's funny. It was funny when I think when people hear Nic's record, I think when people hear Nic made a solo record, if they heard it, they will assume something about it. But when I hear Nic's solo record, I'm like, oh, that couldn't be more Nic. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think it'll be. I'm excited for people to hear it, because I think it's in a weird way like very personal, even though it's basically instrumental.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that is the other part of being in a band for a long time, is knowing when you need to do something else to kind of get something out of your system, or when you need to learn in a way that's outside of all the prying eyes of the thing that a song goes through when it goes through a band, where it gets the shit kicked out of it and hopefully makes it out the other side, you know. It's been good for us to learn those things too, you know.
Do you remember as well, Nic, the first time Rafael played you his solo record, or played you music from it? And then the same again, Rafael, do you remember the first time that Nic kind of showed you some of the stuff he'd been working on solo-wise?
I don't remember specifically the first time, but I definitely remember my first impressions of it. But yeah, I mean, it was, I forget if I saw you play it first, or if I heard the songs first. I think I heard the song first. I think you sent me.
Kind of it's an oldish record. It took a long time for it to come out, so it was a while ago.
Yeah.
It struck me when you started to play me your solo stuff, how it was funny to me. It was like it had this vocabulary that was very much something I equate with music that you like and things that you like to make. And so I loved hearing that, you know, that it was kind of outside of the framework of the band, and you weren't trying to shoehorn it into being anything else. So like I said, like it was funny to me to think about it, because when even the thing that you kind of, there's one thing that we did together that you kind of brought into that project, and I felt like, I was happy that I was on it, because I did think it was this very like personal statement from you about like, it's like, it's really like the guide to what Nic likes in music when you're hanging out with him late at night or something, like, you know what I'm saying? Which I thought that was really cool to have that out there, and I hope people will hear it soon, actually.
Yeah.
Have you found that working on those two records, like your two individual records, has that then gone on to bleed into Chk Chk Chk? Has that affected that process in any way? Did you learn anything from working on those individual records?
Well, yours, I feel like you learned a lot just technically
Totally.
about engineering.
I mean, we view everything as part of the learning process. Everything is, you build on everything. It's like the one thing I always remember is like an interview with Pharrell, like from the early 2000s, where he said like every door opens to the next door. So it's like anything we do is gonna, or I think I was telling you the other day too, like how like my first punk band, I remember like everything we would write, like the whole point of the song would be like, because we figured out how to do like a dub dropout, that was like the whole point, the reason that song existed. And then like 3 songs later, the dub dropout would just be like a little bridge into the chorus, and then the reason that song existed was for a totally different reason, something else we had figured out. So certainly anything, and definitely trying to like finish a solo record and have to kind of finish it all like by myself, and like make it all fly and make it unique. And since I would definitely say that stuff informed our next record. I definitely learned something from that.
Yeah, it all just seems like it kind of bleeds into one continuous evolution that all feeds into each other.
Totally.
Is that the same with like other art forms as well? Like when it comes to music videos and stuff like that, can you kind of infuse that? Do they kind of cross over as well in any way? Are there artistic comparisons?
Well, I wish I could say that it did more, but the videos are usually a different kind of connection. But I would say that definitely, I think with, I think that the video for the last record with You're Paranoid, it felt like a little bit more like that, because that was like something that was like, I just did it with an old friend who's like, she's a director and actress sort of person, and it was like, with that video, it was kind of like, she had a like basic treatment like video people will have, and then she had like a soundstage rented and some actors and actresses that we would do some stuff with. And then that was right around the time that we were both reading actually the Beastie Boys book, and I was really into the idea of like how when they made the Sabotage video, they just drove around LA with Spike Jonze, and like when they would see a cool place, they would be like, all right, let's do something here, and they would just do it that way. And so I was like, well, let's just do that in LA. Let's just drive around to some places and see what we get, which is exactly what we did. And we got some of the coolest stuff in the video from those moments. And that's very much akin to like kind of what we're doing with the band and the records. Like this is a cool bit here and this is a cool bit here. Let's like just mash this together. And like that same method of just like whatever comes in your path. Okay, how can we throw this into the mix? So I would say that's one of the few videos that we've done with that way, but it's interesting because it's like it is something that I think about more, because it's interesting because I've been reading the Rob Halford book, in the guy from Judas Priest, and their look of it's like you watch the old videos of them on YouTube and they just look like every other 70s band, and it doesn't really connect and work. And once they get those leather and studs on, it's like the whole thing is complete and it really comes across, And he even talks about, before he's in bands, he's in like theater in not London. He's near Birmingham, or actually just outside. I forget where he is, but he's in the theater and he's kind of like picks up little tricks that he knows how to use. So when he has to like when the camera's on him and he's acting in the Breaking the Law video, he can snap right into it and he can do it, and he really puts it across and was able to translate that moment. Whereas like I think other 70s bands who dressed like them in 74 like kind of fell by the wayside, but they were able to rise to that moment and really succeed as an MTV type of band. They had a look and a kind of thing that they were able to put across. I do not think that we've ever nailed that necessarily. I've liked certain videos that we've done, and I wish I could say that we had I think we would be a bigger deal if we knew how to make that work. I understand why that works. I understand why it attracted me to Judas Priest as a kid, and I understand what, why every photo you see of the White Stripes, they look amazing because, it's a simple thing that works. I don't think we've ever found that.
Do you think that's partly though because your musical personality is so all over the place in terms of genre and influences? Like we've been saying, the records are so eclectic, it would be hard to kind of condense it into one cohesive image.
It's a lot of stuff. I think
It's a
that's
lot
a
of
good point. I
things.
mean, I think, it's a lot of stuff. I think that it's hard. It's, any band that has kind of such a strong front person as Nick, I think there is that kind of thing where it's like, 95% of people when they think of Chk 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 think of Nick. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like in a weird way, it's like the aesthetics.
I know it's what I think of.
And I feel like so much of what we're known for is like what he does on stage and the kind of energy he gives off and all that kind of stuff. And then so I feel like it's hard to, but the in the band itself, it's like it's a very much like a band kind of hang. It's like we're all
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard to translate kind of like the fact that he is this focal point and embodies so much of what the band is, but also like so much of what the band is to us is like us sitting around like having dinner together and joking around and playing music for each other and stuff like that. So I feel like in a way aesthetically we haven't been able to capture both sides of that. It's like it's either like Nick doing his thing, which is great, or it's us all doing our thing, which is kind of like maybe not that fun to watch.
Right.
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm always curious to hear. It would be great if we could knock it out the park, but I just don't know how that would. I don't even know what that would look like at this point. Though I think it'd be great if somebody was able to figure it out. I'm not the person to figure it out. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, it just has to do more also with us just being more excited by music. It's like we're not visual artists, and we're not like necessarily. We don't have the proclivity for that sort of things. Like, we like film and stuff, but I can't really hang with the big dogs and talk about it. I'm always I'm reading a Rob Halford book. I'm more interested in the musical side of things.
I mean, you mentioned Judas Priest there, though, and them finding their kind of style and how that revolutionized things for them. When did you come up on the Shorts? When did they become a figure of the band?
I mean, it was pretty, it's pretty natural how those things would be. It was really just like, actually, I was with that same friend who I made the Paranoid video with, and we were at a thrift store, and I like pulled out those shorts, these like kind of short shorts, and I was kind of like, "Can I do this?" And she was like, "You can do anything." And it's very much her style. She's a very fashionable person, and she definitely, but like fashionable in that way of like, she usually does something interesting and creative and not just trend following, And so I was like, yeah, you can do anything. And so I was wearing the shorts that week, and I remember I walked up to meet our drummer at the time, John, and he was like, "Oh, look at you, Liberace," like they were pretty fancy pants at the time, and he basically bet me that I couldn't wear that outfit for the rest of the week because we were there in Sacramento working on the record, and he bet me £5, and I think he bet me £5, and he had to call me Liberace as my nickname. So I was like, okay, fair enough, let's do this, And so I was wearing the shorts all week, and we played a show at the end of the week in San Francisco, and I walked on stage, and I remember like 10 minutes into the show, there's these girls in the back who are like, "We like your shorts." I was like, well, that seems like a pretty good tip or whatever. But then we came out from the show, and the car had been broken into, and with my backpack, with my passport and the yada yada, all my clothes for the tour. So I'm pretty much left with the shorts, the end. And so I wear the shorts for the rest of the tour. And then it was like, after that, it was kind of like a wrap. I had to always wear them because people just liked them.
Well, and then you didn't wear them one time, and people got mad at you.
Right, yeah. I did try. I kept it very natural, and then I was like, I just wear them because, I want to and whatever. If I don't want to wear them. But we played this one show in Paris where we kind of sucked. They all came up to me after the show, and they said, "But why you don't wear the shorts?" And so I was kind of like, fuck, I got to wear the shorts now. So I have worn the shorts every time since then. Except
including in like minus 14-degree weather in Utah one time.
Yeah.
We were playing on New Year's Eve. It was freezing, and I think we were all kind of like, is he going to do it? And then he hopped on there with the shorts. It was like, all right, here we go.
I did.